The chamber was enormous, built to hold the representatives of 47 different species. Ambassador Chen Rodriguez stood in the center of the circular room, feeling very small. Above her, thousands of eyes watched from elevated platforms. Some of those eyes were like human eyes. Others glowed in the dark. Some were compound like insects. A few species did not have eyes at all, but Chen knew they were watching her anyway. She had practiced her speech for months. She had memorized every word, every pause, every gesture. Earth had sent its best diplomat to this moment. This was humanity's chance to join the great community of galactic civilizations. This was the moment that would change everything. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Chen began, her voice amplified to reach every corner of the vast chamber. I stand before you today representing the people of Earth. We are a young species, we know this. We have much to learn from the wisdom of older civilizations, but we come here with open hearts and open minds. We wish only to take our place among the stars, to trade with you, to learn from you, and to contribute what we can to the greater galactic community. She looked around the chamber, trying to make eye contact with as many representatives as possible. Some looked back with what might have been sympathy. Others turned away. The Kelteran representative, High Arbiter Velthun, sat in the highest seat of all. His species looked almost human, except for the silver skin and the third eye in the center of his forehead. That third eye never blinked. It stared at Chen with something that looked very much like contempt. Chen continued her speech. She talked about Earth's achievements. She talked about human art, human science, human philosophy. She talked about humanity's desire for peace. She showed images of Earth, beautiful blue and green against the black of space. She showed images of human children playing, human families laughing, human cities full of life. When she finished, there was silence. It stretched on for nearly a minute. Then High Arbiter Velthun stood. The chamber fell even quieter. We have heard Earth's petition, Velthun said. His voice was cold and flat. We have reviewed humanity's history. We have studied human behavior. We have analyzed human psychology and human culture. And we have reached a decision. Chen felt her heart beating faster. This was it. After decades of preparation. After humanity's first contact with alien life. After all the hopes and dreams of billions of people back home. This was the moment. The Galactic Council votes to deny Earth's petition for membership, Velthun announced. Furthermore, we are establishing a quarantine zone around all human-controlled space. No trade will be permitted. No technology transfer will be allowed. No contact between humanity and civilized species will be tolerated. Earth and its colonies are hereby isolated from galactic civilization indefinitely. The words hit Chen like a physical blow. She heard gasps from the human delegation behind her. She saw some of the alien representatives nodding in agreement. Others looked uncomfortable, but none spoke up. This is not just, Chen said, fighting to keep her voice steady. We have done nothing to deserve this. We have broken no laws. We have threatened no one. On what grounds do you make this judgment? Velthun's third eye fixed on her with laser focus. On the grounds of galactic safety. Humanity is too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous. You have warred among yourselves for your entire history. You develop weapons at an alarming rate. You expand without caution. You take risks that would terrify any rational species. In the mere 200 years since you developed nuclear technology, you have nearly destroyed yourselves 3 times. You are not ready for the responsibilities of galactic citizenship. Perhaps you never will be. Every species has a violent past, Chen argued. The records show that the Kelteran Empire fought civil wars for 5 centuries before achieving peace. The Torgathi were known as galaxy-wide raiders before they joined the Council. You cannot judge us for our history when we are trying to build a better future. We judge you on your present, not your past. Another representative spoke up. This one was a massive creature that looked like a boulder with tentacles. Human military vessels have been detected scanning Council territories. Human corporations have attempted to steal proprietary technologies. Human colonists have settled on worlds without proper authorization. You act as though the galaxy belongs to you. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo, who had been standing silently beside Chen, stepped forward. She was a tall woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen combat. We scan your territories because you refuse to share navigation data. We develop our own technology because you refuse to trade with us fairly. We settle new worlds because Earth is overcrowded, and you have blocked us from purchasing established colony rights. Every action you condemn is a response to your own hostility toward us. Silence, Velthun commanded. This is not a debate. The decision has been made. The vote was 41 in favor of quarantine, 4 opposed, 2 abstaining. Earth is isolated. You have 1 month to withdraw any human presence from shared space. After that, any human ship found outside the quarantine zone will be destroyed without warning. This hearing is concluded. The gavel came down with a sound like thunder. Chen wanted to scream, to argue, to demand justice. But she was a diplomat. She bowed stiffly and turned to leave. The human delegation filed out of the chamber in stunned silence. Behind them, the alien representatives began to talk among themselves. Chen heard fragments of conversation as she left. Too dangerous, yes, the Kelterans are right. But did you see their art? Such passion. Better to be safe. Who knows what weapons they will develop? My trade consortium will lose billions from this decision. Small price for safety. The door sealed behind them with a hiss. The human delegation stood in the corridor outside, looking at each other. Dr. Marcus Webb, the head of Earth's science delegation, was the first to speak. They are afraid of us, he said quietly. They should be, Admiral Okonkwo replied. Her voice was hard as steel. If they think we will just accept this, they do not understand humans at all. Chen leaned against the wall. She felt tired, defeated. What can we do? They control the hyperspace lanes. They control the trade routes. They have technology centuries ahead of ours. We are one species against 47. Then we adapt, Okonkwo said. That is what humans do. We survive. We overcome. They want to isolate us? Fine. We will build our own civilization. We will develop our own technology. And one day they will regret this decision. Sarah, be realistic, Chen said. Without access to their knowledge, our development will be set back by centuries. Our colonies are already struggling. How will we support them without trade? Webb adjusted his glasses, a nervous habit he had when he was thinking. Chen, do you know why I think they are really afraid of us? It is not because we are aggressive. Half the species in the Council have more violent histories than we do. It is because we innovate, we create. We solve problems in ways they never expect. Their civilizations are old, stable, set in their ways. We are young and chaotic, and we do not accept limitations. That terrifies them. Marcus is right, Okonkwo said. Look at our history. Whenever humans have been told something is impossible, we find a way to do it anyway. They think isolation will contain us. I think it will free us. We will not waste time trying to fit into their systems. We will build our own. Chen looked at her colleagues. Despite everything, despite the crushing disappointment of the day, she saw determination in their eyes. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps this was not an ending but a beginning. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. The human delegation used that time to plan. They sent encrypted messages ahead, preparing Earth's government for what was coming. They drafted proposals for new research initiatives, new exploration missions, new colony support systems. When they finally arrived at Earth, they found the planet in turmoil. News of the quarantine had spread. Some people were angry. Some were afraid. Many were both. Protests filled the streets of major cities. Galactic justice became a rallying cry. The United Earth government struggled to maintain order. Chen addressed the Global Assembly the day after her return. The chamber was packed with representatives from every nation and every major colony. Billions more watched via broadcast. We have been rejected, she told them. The Galactic Council has judged us unworthy. They have isolated us, cut us off from the community of civilized worlds. They have made it clear that we are not welcome among the stars. She paused, letting the anger in the room build. But I say to you now, we do not need their welcome. We do not need their permission. We are human beings, and we have never asked permission to reach for greatness. Our ancestors crossed oceans without maps. They flew into the sky when everyone said it was impossible. They walked on the moon when the entire universe told them to stay home. And we will do what we have always done. We will survive. We will adapt. We will thrive. Not because the galaxy allows it, but because we refuse to accept any other option. The chamber erupted in applause. It was not the polite applause of diplomacy. It was thunder, the sound of defiance, the sound of a species that had been insulted and would not forget. Over the next weeks, Earth's government mobilized. Admiral Okonkwo was given command of a new military initiative called the Frontier Fleet. Its mission was to explore beyond the quarantine zone, to find resources and opportunities in the uncharted regions of space where the Council did not patrol. Dr. Webb was given nearly unlimited funding for a research program called Prometheus. Its goal was simple and audacious: to develop technology that would surpass what the Council possessed, using nothing but human ingenuity. Chen herself was appointed as the head of colonial affairs. Her job was to keep Earth's struggling colonies alive and growing, despite the loss of trade. It would be the hardest job of her career. In a secret meeting room deep beneath Geneva, the three of them met with Earth's president and military chiefs. The mood was grim but focused. "How long until we see results?" President Amara Osi asked. She was a woman who had led Earth through 2 crises already. Now she faced a third. "Prometheus will need at least 5 years before major breakthroughs," Webb said. "We are essentially starting from scratch, reverse engineering alien principles without alien help. But I have good people. We will make it work." "The Frontier Fleet can launch initial expeditions within 6 months," Okonkwo reported. "We have enough ships. The question is whether we have enough supplies for long-range missions beyond the quarantine zone." "The colonies are our weak point," Chen admitted. "Mars, Europa, and Titan can sustain themselves. But the newer colonies, the ones in other star systems, they were dependent on Council trade. We need to establish supply lines, and we need to do it fast." President Osei nodded slowly. "Then that is our priority. Keep the colonies alive. Keep them loyal. If we lose them, we lose everything. Sarah, your Frontier Fleet needs to prioritize finding resources we can use to support the outer colonies. Marcus, Prometheus needs to focus on technologies that will help us become self-sufficient. Chen, I know you will do everything possible for our people out there, but I need you to understand something." She looked at each of them in turn. "We are entering what historians will probably call the long night. Things will get worse before they get better. People will suffer. Some colonies may fail, but we cannot give up. We cannot surrender. Because if we do, if we accept this judgment and fade away quietly, then we prove the Council right. We prove that humans are not strong enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough to stand among the stars. I will not accept that." "Will you?" "No, ma'am," all 3 answered together. "Good," Osei said. "Then let us begin. The galaxy has tried to lock us away. Let us show them what happens when you corner a human being. Let us show them what we build in the darkness." They left that meeting knowing that the fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. It was a heavy burden. But as Admiral Okonkwo said to Chen in the corridor afterward, humans had always done their best work when their backs were against the wall. The quarantine came into effect 30 days after the Council's verdict. Human ships withdrew from shared space. The last human trading post in Council territory closed down. The invisible walls went up around human space, monitored by Council drones and patrol ships. Earth and its colonies were alone. But in that isolation, something began to grow. It was anger, yes, but also determination. It was the stubborn human refusal to accept fate. It was the knowledge that they had been judged and found wanting, and the burning desire to prove that judgment wrong. In laboratories across Earth and its colonies, scientists worked day and night on Prometheus. They took apart the few pieces of alien technology they had managed to acquire before the quarantine. They studied the principles, then threw away the alien solutions and looked for human ones. In shipyards orbiting Luna and Mars, workers built vessels designed not for trade but for survival. These were ships meant to venture into the unknown and return with what humanity needed to endure. In government offices and colonial administrations, people like Chen worked to stretch limited resources across an entire civilization. They made hard choices. They prioritized. They sacrificed. And on the bridge of the first Frontier Fleet vessel to leave the quarantine zone, Admiral Okonkwo looked out at unexplored space and gave the order that would echo through history. "Take us beyond the boundary. Take us where they have never looked. Humanity does not ask for permission anymore. We make our own way now." The ship jumped to faster than light speed, leaving Council space behind. It was the first step on a long journey. Humanity had been banned from the galaxy. Very well, they would build something better. They would build their own kingdom. The first 5 years were the hardest. Earth had prepared as best it could, but no amount of preparation could soften the shock of complete isolation. The colonies in particular suffered. Titan Colony, which had relied on imported food from Council agricultural worlds, faced starvation in the first winter. Chen Rodriguez worked 20-hour days coordinating emergency supply runs from Earth and Mars, pushing aging transport ships to their limits. 2,000 people died on Titan that first year. Chen attended a memorial service via video link, watching colonists who had lost children, parents, friends. She promised them it would get better. She hoped she was not lying. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the frontier vessel Discovery as it entered a star system no human had ever seen before. The ship was 5 months beyond the quarantine zone now, venturing deeper into unexplored space than any Council vessel had traveled in centuries. The Council preferred to stay in their established territories, following the same trade routes they had used for thousands of years. That conservatism was about to become humanity's advantage. "Commander Park, what are the sensors showing?" Okonkwo asked. Commander James Park, a young officer with sharp eyes and quick reflexes, studied his display. 3 rocky planets in the habitable zone, Admiral. The second one has oxygen in the atmosphere, lots of water, and the asteroid belt beyond the 4th planet is showing massive mineral deposits, iron, platinum, rare earth elements, more than we could mine in a century. Okonkwo allowed herself a small smile. "Mark this system as Priority 1. Send the data back to Earth immediately. This is what we needed." Over the next 3 years, the Frontier Fleet found 17 systems like that one. None were as rich as Council space, but they were unclaimed and undefended. More importantly, they were beyond Council jurisdiction. Humanity began mining operations in 12 of those systems, harvesting resources that would keep the colonies supplied and Earth's factories running. But mining alone would not save humanity. They needed technology. They needed to catch up with species that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years, while humans were still banging rocks together. That was where Dr. Marcus Webb and the Prometheus program came in. Webb had always been considered brilliant but unconventional. His colleagues at the Global Institute of Technology had often complained that he did not follow proper research protocols. He took shortcuts. He tried experiments that should not work. He mixed disciplines that had no business being mixed. Now, with the weight of human survival on his shoulders, those unconventional methods became humanity's secret weapon. The Council's faster-than-light travel used something called hyperspace lanes. These were natural channels through spacetime that allowed ships to travel enormous distances quickly. The problem was that these lanes were fixed. You could only go where the lanes went. The Council had spent millennia mapping these lanes and building their civilization around them. It was efficient, but it was also predictable and limiting. Webb looked at the problem differently. "Why do we need to follow their roads?" he asked his research team. "Why not build our own?" The answer came from quantum physics. Webb's team discovered that spacetime could be folded, like a piece of paper, bringing 2 distant points together. It required enormous energy, and the calculations were incredibly complex, but it worked. More importantly, it worked anywhere. A human ship with a quantum fold drive could travel to any point in space without needing to follow hyperspace lanes. The first test nearly destroyed the research station. The second test succeeded, but left the test pilot unconscious for 3 days. The third test worked perfectly. By year 7 of the long night, human ships were being retrofitted with quantum fold drives. They were slower than hyperspace for long distances, but they could go anywhere. That was worth the trade-off. Other breakthroughs followed. Human AI researchers, working without Council restrictions on artificial intelligence, developed neural networks that could think and adapt. These AIs were not conscious, not alive, but they were brilliant at solving problems. Human weapons designers created kinetic missiles that could strike targets from millions of kilometers away. Human genetic scientists unlocked ways to help humans survive in hostile environments without cumbersome environmental suits. The Council had spent thousands of years developing their technology carefully, cautiously, making sure each advancement was safe and stable. Humanity did not have thousands of years. They innovated fast, took risks, and accepted failures as learning opportunities. In 15 years, they compressed what should have been centuries of progress. But technology alone would not be enough. Humanity needed allies, and that was something no one had expected to find in the outer darkness. Captain James Ketter commanded a scout ship called the Pathfinder. He was 35 years old and had spent most of his adult life in space. He had been part of the Frontier Fleet since its founding, and he had seen things that would give diplomats nightmares. He had found dead worlds, He had found ruins of civilizations that had destroyed themselves. He had found beauty and horror in equal measure in the unexplored regions beyond. Council space. What he found in year 12 changed everything. The Pathfinder was investigating a nebula when sensors detected artificial structures. At first, Keter thought they were council installations, but the design was wrong. These structures were crude, cobbled together from salvaged materials and desperation. They were also inhabited. Hail them, Keter ordered. All frequencies. Let them know we are peaceful. The response came in a language the ship's computers did not recognize, but the tone was unmistakable. It was afraid. It took 3 days of patient communication before Keter learned the truth. The structures belonged to a species called the Kryn. They were warriors by culture, with bodies built for combat and a society based on honor and strength. 20 years ago, they had applied to join the Galactic Council. The Council had rejected them, calling them too aggressive and too militaristic. The Kryn had protested. They had argued. They had made demands. The Council had quarantined them, just like humanity. Unlike humanity, the Kryn did not have the industrial base or technological knowledge to survive isolation easily. They had been dying slowly, their population scattered across a few desperate stations and ships. They expected Keter to be another council patrol come to finish them off. Instead, Keter offered them alliance. We are human, he told the Kryn commander, a scarred veteran named Therax. The council rejected us too. They called us too dangerous, too unpredictable. They tried to make us disappear. But we refused to die. We have been surviving out here for 12 years now. We have resources. We have technology. What we need are allies who understand what it means to be judged and cast aside. Therax studied Keter through the video link. The Kryn looked like someone had crossed a human with a bear and a tank. He was massive, covered in thick plates of natural armor with 4 arms and eyes that glowed amber. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like an avalanche. Why would you help us? What do you gain? A friend, Keter said simply. And the galaxy will learn that when it rejects someone, it does not make them disappear. It makes them allies. The alliance between humanity and the Kryn started small. Human supply ships brought food and medicine to Kryn stations. In exchange, Kryn warriors began serving on human vessels, their natural strength and combat abilities making them invaluable crew members. More importantly, they shared what they knew. The Kryn had different technologies than humans, different approaches to problems. The exchange of knowledge benefited both species. News of the human-Kryn alliance spread through the outer territories. Other quarantined species heard about it and reached out. The Ceph, a species of brilliant mathematicians and philosophers who had been rejected for being too detached from practical concerns, made contact. The Vorn, an insectoid species rejected for their hive mind structure, sent ambassadors. By year 18 of the Long Night, humanity was no longer alone. They had allies, partners, friends. Together, these rejected species formed something new. They called it the Terran Alliance, named after Terra. The old Latin name for Earth, Chen Rodriguez, now older and grayer but no less determined, found herself negotiating treaties with alien species the Council had deemed unworthy. She discovered that she liked these species far more than she had liked most Council members. The Kryn were direct and honest. The Ceph were thoughtful and wise. The Vorn were industrious and creative. None of them played the political games that Council species seemed to love. They were all survivors, and survivors understood each other. We need to formalize this, Chen told President Osei during one of their regular meetings. Osei was in her 3rd term now, her hair completely white but her mind still sharp. The Terran Alliance needs structure. We need laws, trade agreements, mutual defense pacts. We need to build something that will last. Agreed, Osei said. But we need to be careful. We cannot replicate the Council's mistakes. We cannot create a hierarchy where some species are more important than others. That is what drove us all out here in the first place. Then we build something different, Chen said. Every species has an equal voice. Decisions are made by consensus, not by the strongest forcing their will on the weakest. We protect each other because it is right, not because we expect something in return. It was an idealistic vision, perhaps too idealistic, but the Terran Alliance was built by idealists and survivors, and they made it work. Over the next 5 years, the Alliance grew stronger. Trade flourished between member species. Technologies were shared freely. Cultural exchanges became common. Kryn warriors trained human soldiers. Human engineers helped Vorn workers build better habitation structures. Ceph philosophers taught at human universities. Admiral Okonkwo, now in her 70s but still refusing to retire, oversaw the construction of the Bastion worlds. These were 5 heavily fortified systems that guarded the borders of Terran Alliance space. Each one was a fortress, equipped with the best weapons and defenses that human and allied ingenuity could create. They served 2 purposes: to defend against any Council aggression, and to show the galaxy that the Alliance was here to stay. Dr. Webb, working with Ceph mathematicians and Vorn engineers, achieved breakthroughs that made his earlier work look like child's play. The quantum fold drive was refined to the point where it matched hyperspace speeds. Human Kryn joint weapons programs created ship-to-ship missiles that could track targets through evasive maneuvers. Vorn hive-mind coordination techniques were adapted to human and Kryn fighter squadrons, allowing them to operate with perfect synchronization. By year 25 of the Long Night, the Terran Alliance was no longer a collection of desperate survivors clinging to life in the outer darkness. It was a civilization. It was growing, thriving, powerful. Earth, renamed the Throne World in recognition of humanity's role as the founder and heart of the Alliance, had gone from a quarantined backwater to the capital of an interstellar nation. But the galaxy was about to notice. It happened by accident. A Council patrol ship, hunting pirates near the edge of civilized space, picked up unusual readings. Following those readings, they discovered a Terran Alliance mining outpost. The patrol ship approached cautiously, expecting to find a primitive operation running on salvaged equipment. Instead, they found a state-of-the-art facility with advanced sensors, powerful defensive weapons, and multiple species working together. When the patrol ship requested identification, the station's commander, a human woman named Captain Sarah Lynn, replied with calm confidence. "This is Terran Alliance Mining Station 77. You are approaching Allied sovereign territory. State your intentions or withdraw." The Council patrol ship did not know what to make of this. The Terran Alliance? Allied sovereign territory? These were terms that implied organization, government, military strength. The report said the quarantined species should be struggling to survive, not building mining operations and claiming sovereignty. The patrol ship withdrew and reported what they had found. The report made its way up the Council chain of command. Within a week it reached Kepler Station, where the Galactic Council held its sessions. High Arbiter Velthun read the report 3 times, each time with growing disbelief. It had been 25 years since he had presided over humanity's rejection. In that time, he had assumed the human problem had solved itself. Isolated species always faded away eventually. They ran out of resources, or their populations declined, or they destroyed themselves in internal conflicts. That was how it always worked. But humanity had not faded away. They had built something. They had allied with other rejected species. They had claimed territory. They had military installations. They were calling themselves sovereign. This was unacceptable. This was intolerable. This was dangerous. Velthun called an emergency council session. Representatives from all 47 member species gathered to hear his report. When he finished, the chamber erupted in argument. "This is exactly what we feared," a Torgan representative declared. "The humans have become aggressive expansionists, just as we predicted. They are building an empire in the outer territories. An empire of rejects and outcasts," another voice added. "The species we deemed unfit for civilization. Of course they would band together. Misery loves company, but not everyone was convinced. A few representatives, particularly those from species that traded in the outer regions and had heard rumors of the Terran Alliance, spoke more cautiously. "Perhaps we should investigate further before taking action," a Delphian representative suggested. "We do not know their true strength or intentions. Rushing into conflict could be costly." "Investigate?" Velthun's third eye focused on the Delphian with visible contempt. "They are building military installations. They are claiming sovereign territory. They are allied with species we specifically rejected as dangerous. What more do we need to know? Every day we delay is a day they grow stronger. We must act now while we still hold overwhelming advantage." The debate continued for hours. Finally, a vote was called. Should the Council send a fleet to the Terran Alliance to demand their submission and dissolution? Should they enforce the quarantine with military force if necessary? The vote was 39 in favor, 6 opposed, 2 abstaining. The Galactic Council would send a fleet. They would remind these upstart species that there was only one galactic government and it was not the Terran Alliance. They would show them that rejecting council authority had consequences. High Arbiter Velthun smiled as the vote concluded. He had made the mistake of being lenient with humanity once, of simply isolating them instead of crushing them. He would not make that mistake again. The humans and their pathetic allies would learn their place. They would submit or they would be destroyed. But Velthun did not understand humans. He had never understood them. If he had, he would have known that the absolute worst thing you could do to a human being was threaten them after they had already survived your worst. On the throne world, Admiral Okonkwo received intelligence about the Council's vote 3 days before the official declaration of intent. The Terran Alliance had spies now, informants within Council space who saw the wisdom of humanity's approach and quietly shared information. Okonkwo called an emergency meeting of the Alliance Defense Council. Leaders from all allied species gathered, including General Therax of the Kryn, Prime Mathematician Selendis of the Ceph, and Queen Vixtha of the Vorn. The Council is sending a fleet, Okonkwo told them. They intend to intimidate us into dissolving the Alliance and accepting their authority. They believe we will scatter and hide like frightened animals. Therax's forearms clenched into fists. Then they will learn what happens when they corner warriors. They will learn what happens when they underestimate those they have wronged, Selendis added, her voice musical but hard. Queen Vixtha, speaking through her translator, made a chittering sound that the device rendered as cold laughter. They think we are weak because we were cast aside. They will discover their error. The Hive stands with humanity. Okonkwo looked at her allies, these beings from different worlds with different cultures, and felt pride. Then we prepare for war. Not because we want it, but because they are leaving us no choice. Send orders to all Bastion worlds. Bring the defense fleets to full readiness. Contact all outposts and colonies. Everyone needs to understand what is coming. She paused, then added quietly, and send a message to President Ose. Tell her the long night is ending. One way or another, the galaxy is about to learn what we built in the darkness. The Terran Alliance expanded rapidly over the next 5 years. 4 more quarantined species were discovered and integrated into the Alliance. New colonies were established in unclaimed territory. Trade flourished. The Alliance's economy, built on cooperation and shared resources rather than exploitation, grew stronger each year. Most importantly, the Alliance's military continued to develop. Dr. Marcus Webb, working with scientists from all allied species, created weapons and defenses that the Council had never imagined. Swarm drones controlled by Vorn hive minds, energy shields that adapted in real time using Ceph mathematical models, kinetic weapons that could fire projectiles at relativistic speeds, stealth technology that made Alliance ships nearly invisible to Council sensors. Admiral Okonkwo oversaw the construction of 5 more Bastion worlds, bringing the total to 10. These fortresses ringed Alliance space, each one a nearly impregnable defensive position. But Okonkwo was not content to simply defend. She trained assault forces, practicing coordinated attacks that combined human tactics with Kryn ferocity and Vorn coordination. The Alliance would defend its territory, yes, but if pushed, it would push back hard. Earth itself transformed in those years. The throne world became a symbol of what the Alliance represented. In the capital city of Geneva, the Alliance Hall rose, a massive structure built with materials and labor from every member species. Inside, representatives from dozens of worlds met to debate, discuss, and decide the future of their civilization. Chen Rodriguez presided over these meetings with a skill honed by decades of diplomacy. She had learned something important during the long night. Unity did not mean uniformity. The Alliance's strength came from its diversity. Humans brought innovation and adaptability. Kryn brought martial strength and honor. Ceph brought wisdom and calculation. Vorn brought industry and coordination. Other species brought their own unique contributions. Together, they were stronger than any single species could ever be. But not everyone was happy with the Alliance's success. Within Council space, the debate raged. The hardliners, led by High Arbiter Velthun and supported by the Keltran Empire, demanded military action. They argued that the Terran Alliance was a threat to galactic stability and needed to be crushed before it grew too powerful. The moderates, a smaller but vocal group, argued for caution. The Alliance had proven it could defend itself. More importantly, Some council species were starting to question whether the council's rejection of these species had been wise. If the Terran Alliance could build a thriving civilization from rejected species, what did that say about the council's judgment? The debate might have continued indefinitely if not for an incident in year 33 of what had once been called the Long Night. A council patrol intercepted a human merchant vessel in neutral space. Despite the vessel being outside Alliance territory and carrying legitimate trade goods for neutral worlds, the council captain ordered it seized. When the human captain protested, the council ship opened fire, destroying the merchant vessel with all hands. 37 civilians died, 22 humans, 8 Kryn, 4 Ceph, and 3 Vorn. They had been carrying medical supplies to a neutral colony suffering from a plague outbreak. They had been unarmed. They had done nothing wrong except be members of the Terran Alliance. When news of the attack reached the throne world, the reaction was immediate and volcanic. Protests filled the streets. Citizens of all species demanded justice. The Alliance military mobilized, and Prime Minister Chen Rodriguez, now in her 70s but with fire still burning in her eyes, made a broadcast that every being in the galaxy would hear. For 33 years we have endured isolation. We have endured rejection. We have built our own civilization because you told us we were not worthy of yours, and we accepted that. We did not seek conflict. We did not threaten you. We only asked to be left alone to build our future in peace. Her voice hardened. But now you have murdered our civilians. You have killed innocents carrying medicine to the sick. You have declared by your actions that you will not even let us live in peace. Very well. If the Council wants war, the Terran Alliance will give them war. But know this. We are not the desperate survivors you rejected decades ago. We are a kingdom of free peoples, and we will defend our own. The long night is over. The dawn comes, and it will be red. The declaration sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The Council had wanted to intimidate the Alliance. Instead, they had given the Alliance justification for war and united its people in righteous anger. Even the most peaceful members of the Alliance, species that had counseled caution and diplomacy, now supported military action. General Therax, now Supreme Commander of all Alliance ground forces, assembled his armies. Admiral Okonkwo, though she was now 80 years old and her body failing, refused to step down from command of the fleet. Dr. Webb worked around the clock to ensure every Alliance ship had the latest weapons and defenses. But Chen Rodriguez, even in her anger, still thought like a diplomat. Before the first shot of war was fired, she sent one final message to the Galactic Council. It was not a plea for peace. It was a warning. You have declared through your actions that the Terran Alliance has no right to exist. We reject your declaration. We will exist. We will thrive. We will defend ourselves. And when this war is over, when the last shot is fired and the last ship falls, the galaxy will remember this. You could have lived in peace with us. You chose not to. What happens next is on your conscience, not ours. The message ended with coordinates. The Alliance was not going to wait to be attacked. They were going to strike first at a Council military base in the border regions. It would be the opening move in a war that would reshape the galaxy. On the bridge of the Defiant, Admiral Okonkwo looked at her assembled fleet. 300 ships representing the full military might of the Terran Alliance. Human vessels painted with Earth's blue and green. Kryn warships decorated with battle honors. Ceph science vessels converted to military use. Foreign hive ships carrying thousands of warriors. And dozens more ships from smaller allied species all ready to fight and die together. This is it, she said quietly to Therax, who stood beside her in full battle armor. This is what we built. This is what we are. Not conquerors, but defenders. Not empire, but kingdom. A kingdom of free peoples who refuse to bow. Therax's amber eyes glowed with anticipation. Then let us show the Council what happens when they make free peoples into enemies. Let us show them the strength of the kingdom they tried to destroy before it was born. All ships, Okonkwo commanded, her voice carrying to every vessel in the fleet. Engage quantum fold drives. Target coordinates transmitted. We go to war not because we want to, but because we must. We fight not for conquest, but for survival. We stand not as divided species, but as one alliance, one kingdom, one people. For the Terran Alliance. For our fallen. For our future. The fleet jumped to faster than light speed, leaving Alliance space behind. They were heading into Council territory, into the heart of their enemy's power. It was a bold move, perhaps a desperate one, but humanity had always done its best work when desperate, and now they had allies who shared that human trait. The refusal to surrender, the determination to survive, the courage to face impossible odds and fight anyway. The Terran kingdom, built in darkness and isolation, was about to show the galaxy what it had become. The Council had tried to make humanity and its allies disappear. Instead, they had created something stronger than they could imagine, and that strength was about to be tested in fire. The Council fleet arrived at the border of Terran Alliance space with the arrogance of the powerful, confronting the weak. 50 warships representing the combined military might of a dozen Council species emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. It was a display meant to intimidate, to show the pathetic alliance of rejects exactly what they faced if they refused to submit. Admiral Velknor, a veteran Kelteran commander, stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Absolute Authority. He had fought in 3 major campaigns and put down 2 rebellions. This, he expected, would not even qualify as a real battle. More likely, the humans and their allies would see the fleet panic and surrender immediately. They would beg for mercy. They would promise to disband. And if they were very lucky, the Council would allow them to survive in their isolated, powerless state. "Send the demand," Velknor ordered. The communication went out on all frequencies, translated into every language known to the Alliance. Its message was simple and absolute. Dissolve the Terran Alliance immediately. Acknowledge Council authority. Withdraw all claims to sovereign territory. Submit within 12 hours or face the consequences. The reply came from Bastion World 3, the fortress system guarding this approach to Alliance space. Captain James Ketter, now in command of the station's defense fleet, sent back a message that was far shorter than the Council's demand. No. Velknor stared at the screen in disbelief. What did he say? He said no, Admiral, the communications officer reported. Just that single word, no. Send the demand again, Velknor snapped. Perhaps there was a translation error. The demand was sent again. The reply came back identical. No. Velknor's silver skin flushed darker with anger. Open a direct channel. I will speak to this fool personally. Ketter's face appeared on the screen. He was a human in his mid-40s now, with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much to be easily intimidated. Behind him, the bridge of his command ship bustled with activity. Velknor could see Kryn warriors at weapon stations, Ceph mathematicians calculating firing solutions, Vorn engineers monitoring systems. It was disturbing how smoothly the different species seemed to work together. I am Admiral Velknor of the Galactic Council Fleet, he announced. You will surrender immediately or face destruction. This is your final warning, Ketter smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Admiral, I am Captain James Ketter of the Terran Alliance Defense Force. You are trespassing in sovereign territory. You have 12 hours to withdraw before we consider your presence an act of war. Act of war? Velknor could not believe what he was hearing. You cannot threaten the Council. You are a collection of rejected species playing at civilization. We have 50 capital ships. What do you have? Enough, Ketter said simply and closed the channel. Velknor spent the next hour scanning the system. What he saw troubled him. The defenses were far more sophisticated than intelligence reports had suggested. Multiple fortress stations orbited the system's gas giant, each one bristling with weapons. Minefields filled the approaches to the inner system. Sensor arrays covered every possible attack vector. This was not a desperate outpost. This was a prepared defensive position. More concerning were the ships. Velknor counted 43 vessels, ranging from small frigates to large battlecruisers. The designs were strange, clearly cobbled together from multiple technological traditions. But they looked functional, and they were positioned with tactical intelligence. Whoever commanded these forces knew what they were doing. Still, 50 against 43 were good odds, and Council technology was supposed to be superior. Velknor gave the order to advance. What happened next would be studied in military academies for the next century. The Battle of Bastion III, later called the Battle of Frontier's Edge, lasted 18 hours and changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The Council fleet advanced in textbook formation, intending to use their superior firepower to overwhelm the defenders. They expected the Alliance ships to either flee or cluster together in panic. Instead, the Alliance fleet scattered like leaves in wind, each ship moving independently but with purpose. What are they doing? Velknor demanded. That is not a military formation. That is chaos. His tactical officer, studying the screens intently, shook his head. No, Admiral. Look at the pattern. Each ship is moving to maximize firing angles while minimizing exposure. It is controlled chaos. They are using unpredictability as a tactic. The first missiles came from 3 different directions simultaneously. Council point defense systems engaged, destroying most of them, but a few got through, slamming into the shields of Velknor's outer vessels. The shields held, but the impacts were harder than expected. Return fire, Velknor ordered. All ships, target the largest enemy vessels. The Council fleet opened up with their main weapons. Beams of coherent energy and kinetic projectiles filled space. Several Alliance ships were hit, their shields flaring and weakening, but they did not stop moving. They continued their chaotic dance, never staying in one place long enough to be an easy target. Then the real attack began. Small attack craft, hundreds of them, launched from the fortress stations and Alliance carriers. They swarmed toward the Council fleet like angry insects. Council point defense systems began engaging them, but there were too many. For every one destroyed, 3 more got through. The attack craft were piloted by Kryn warriors with human tactical AIs coordinating their movements. They attacked in perfect synchronization, multiple craft focusing on single Council ships, hitting weak points in shields and armor. It was like being attacked by a single intelligent organism made of hundreds of parts. Break formation, Velknor ordered as the attack craft tore into his fleet. All ships engage freely. Destroy those fighters. But breaking formation was exactly what the Alliance wanted. As the Council ships scattered to deal with the attack craft, the Alliance's larger vessels moved in, targeting isolated Council ships with focused fire. The battle devolved into a chaotic melee, and in chaos the Alliance thrived. A human destroyer, damaged and with shields failing, accelerated directly toward a Council cruiser. Velknor watched in horror as it became clear what the human captain intended. They would not dare, he whispered. They dared. The destroyer rammed the cruiser at full speed, both ships exploding in a ball of nuclear fire. It was insane. It was wasteful. It was terrifying, and it worked. The Council fleet, accustomed to civilized warfare where ships withdrew when damaged, did not know how to respond to an enemy willing to die to take them down. The psychological impact was devastating. Admiral Okonkwo watched the battle from the bridge of her flagship, the Defiant, positioned one system away with reinforcements. She did not need to be at Bastion 3. Keter was handling the battle brilliantly, but she needed to be close enough to respond if things went badly. They are fighting well, General Therax rumbled beside her. The massive Kryn warrior had insisted on accompanying Okonkwo, leading a strike force ready to reinforce Bastion 3 if needed. Keter understands that humans and Kryn together are stronger than either alone. The Council is learning this lesson the hard way. They are also learning that we are not afraid to die, Okonkwo said quietly. That ramming attack, it will haunt them. They think we are reckless. They do not understand that we are desperate, and desperation makes humans dangerous. Hours passed. The battle raged on. Council ships began to withdraw, damaged and demoralized. They had come expecting an easy victory. Instead, they had been bloodied by an enemy they had dismissed as irrelevant. Admiral Velknor, on a bridge now darkened by damaged systems, made the hardest decision of his career. All ships withdraw to hyperspace. We retreat. It was a retreat that would echo across the galaxy. The mighty Galactic Council, faced with the upstart Terran Alliance, had attacked and been driven back. News of the battle spread fast. In Council space, the reaction was shock and denial. In the outer territories, among other quarantined species and marginalized groups, the reaction was hope. The Council had been humiliated, and humiliation demanded response. High Arbiter Velthun, receiving Admiral Velknor's report, felt rage like he had never experienced before. The humans had done this. The humans and their pathetic allies had defeated a Council fleet. This could not stand. This would not stand. Assemble the Grand Council, he ordered. We need to discuss a proper response to this insult. But while the Council debated, the Terran Alliance acted. Chen Rodriguez, now carrying the title of Prime Minister, sent envoys to neutral species throughout the galaxy. Her message was simple. The Council claimed to represent galactic civilization, but they had rejected and quarantined species for arbitrary reasons. The Terran Alliance offered an alternative. Join us, build a better future. No species is superior. No species is inferior. We stand together as equals. Some species ignored the message. Some reported it to the council. But some listened. 3 minor council members, species that had always felt marginalized and ignored by the Kelteran and Torgathi power blocks, quietly opened diplomatic channels with the Terran Alliance. They did not join, not yet, but they listened. And listening was the first step. The council military base at Kepler's Reach had stood for 300 years. It was a fortress, a shipyard, and a symbol of council power all in one. Massive orbital platforms manufactured warships. Defense stations bristled with enough firepower to shatter planets. 50,000 military personnel from a dozen species worked there, secure in the knowledge that they served the greatest power in the galaxy. They were utterly unprepared for what emerged from quantum space at Oro 400 station time. 300 Alliance ships appeared simultaneously, their quantum fold drives allowing them to bypass the hyperspace lanes entirely. The Council's early warning systems, designed to detect ships emerging from hyperspace, gave no warning at all. By the time station defense crews realized they were under attack, Alliance missiles were already incoming. Commander Lisa Torres stood on the bridge of the assault carrier Victory, watching the attack unfold with satisfaction. She was 32 years old, born during the long night, and she had spent her entire adult life preparing for this moment. She had been taught by Admiral Okonkwo herself, learning the old warrior's tactical wisdom and adding her own innovations. All wings, engage, Torres ordered. Target priority is the defense platforms. Once those are down, the shipyards are defenseless. 2,000 attack craft launched from Alliance carriers. They swarmed toward the defense platforms like hornets, attacking from all angles simultaneously. The platform's automated defense systems tried to track and engage, but the Alliance craft moved in patterns that seemed random, but were actually controlled by Vorn hive minds. They wove through defensive fire with impossible coordination, each craft knowing instinctively where every other craft would be. The first platform exploded 17 minutes into the battle. The second fell 9 minutes later. By the 1-hour mark, 5 of the 12 platforms were destroyed and 4 more were heavily damaged. The remaining 3 platforms, realizing the battle was lost, transmitted surrender signals. Accepted, Torres said. Cease fire on surrendered targets. All ships advanced to the shipyards. Boarding teams, prepare to secure the facilities. This was the part of the plan that had worried Admiral Okonkwo the most. Destroying the base would be easy. Capturing it intact was much harder. But the Alliance needed those shipyards. They needed the manufacturing capacity, the raw materials, and most importantly, they needed to prove that they could take and hold Council territory. Kryn warriors led the boarding operations. General Therax himself was in the first wave, his forearms wielding weapons that made Council security forces look like children with toys. The Kryn had been waiting 30 years for a chance to prove themselves in real combat. They had spent those years training, preparing, becoming the finest warriors in known space. Now they swept through the shipyards like an avalanche, unstoppable and terrifying. But Therax had learned from humans that victory was not just about strength. It was about how you treated the defeated. When Council personnel surrendered, they were treated with respect. The wounded were given medical care, human medics working alongside Ceph healers. Prisoners were housed in comfortable conditions and told they would be exchanged for Alliance prisoners of war. This was a stark contrast to what Council propaganda had claimed. The Alliance were supposed to be savages, barbarians who would kill without mercy. Instead, they behaved with honor. That created confusion among the captured Council forces, and confusion led to doubts about what their leaders had told them. The Battle of Kepler's Reach lasted 36 hours from first shot to final surrender. When it was over, the Terran Alliance controlled a major Council military base, had captured or destroyed 53 Council warships, and had taken 18,000 prisoners. Alliance losses were significant but acceptable. 28 ships destroyed, 4,000 casualties. More importantly, the Alliance had proven they could attack deep into Council space and win. The psychological impact was enormous. News of the battle spread like wildfire. In Council space, panic set in. If Kepler's Reach could fall, what else was vulnerable? Civilian shipping began avoiding border regions. Insurance rates for vessels traveling near Alliance space skyrocketed. Stock markets crashed as corporations realized that the safe, stable galaxy they had known was coming to an end. High Arbiter Velthun called an emergency session of the Grand Council. The chamber was packed, representatives from all member species present. The mood was ugly. Some species were demanding immediate retaliation. Others wanted to negotiate. A few were quietly wondering if they had picked the wrong side. "This is unacceptable," Velthun thundered. His third eye blazed with fury. "The Alliance has invaded Council territory. They have destroyed Council property. They have taken Council citizens prisoner. This is an act of war, and we must respond with overwhelming force." "We did respond with force," a Delphian representative pointed out. "We sent a fleet to Bastion 3 5 years ago. They defeated us. We sent ships to intercept their merchant vessels. That started this war. Perhaps we should consider that our strategy is not working." "Coward," Velthun spat. "You would surrender to these upstarts? You would let them dictate terms to the Council?" "I would consider reality," the Delphian replied calmly. "The reality is that the Alliance is stronger than we anticipated. The reality is that they have technology we do not fully understand. The reality is that some of our own member species are quietly sympathizing with them. We can continue this war and risk losing more, or we can negotiate from a position that is still relatively strong." The debate raged for hours. Finally, a vote was called. Should the Council mobilize for total war against the Terran Alliance? The result was 34 in favor, 11 opposed, 2 abstaining. It was a weaker majority than Velthun had hoped for, but it was enough. The Council began mobilizing the largest fleet in its history. They called it the Grand Armada. Ships from all member species were requisitioned. Reserves were activated. Shipyards worked triple shifts to repair damaged vessels and build new ones. Within 6 months, the Council had assembled a fleet of over 2,000 warships. It was an impressive display of power. But it came with costs. The mobilization strained the Council's economy. Civilian trade suffered as military needs took priority. And not all member species were happy about contributing to a war that many of them had not wanted. 3 species, all of them minor members that had long felt marginalized in Council politics, made a decision that shocked the galaxy. The Anthari, the Zevil, and the Quinn announced they were withdrawing from the Galactic Council and declaring neutrality in the war. They would not fight for the Alliance, but they would not fight against it either. It was a small rebellion, but it was a crack in the Council's unity. And cracks had a way of spreading. The Alliance, meanwhile, continued to press their advantage. Commander Torres led raids on Council supply lines, destroying or capturing merchant vessels carrying military supplies. Kryn strike teams conducted hit-and-run attacks on Council outposts, appearing without warning, doing massive damage and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. Foreign infiltrators, capable of mimicking other species through biological adaptation, gathered intelligence from deep inside Council territory. But Admiral Okonkwo knew that raids and hit-and-run tactics would not win the war. Eventually, the Council's Grand Armada would come, and when it did, the Alliance would face a battle that would decide their survival. She spent every waking hour preparing for that confrontation, knowing it would be her last fight. Her body was failing. The doctors gave her 6 months at most, but she was determined to see this through. She called a meeting of the Alliance military leadership, Commander Torres, General Therax, Prime Mathematician Selendis, Queen Vixtha, and representatives from every allied species gathered in the war room aboard the Defiant. "The Council is assembling their fleet," Okonkwo told them. "Intelligence estimates over 2,000 ships. They will come here to Sol System, to the Throne World. They want to cut the head off the Alliance by destroying Earth. We need to be ready." "Let them come," Therax rumbled. "We will destroy them as we destroyed them at Bastion 3. Bastion 3 was 50 ships, Okonkwo said. This will be 2,000. We cannot match them in numbers. We need to be smarter. Selendis, her mathematical mind already working through possibilities, spoke up. "We need to use the terrain to our advantage. Sol System has 8 planets, hundreds of moons, billions of asteroids. We can use all of them. We can create a 3-dimensional battlefield that negates their numerical advantage. We also need to break their unity," Torres added. "Intelligence reports say that not all Council species are committed to this war. If we can cause dissension in their fleet, make some species question why they are fighting, we might be able to turn some of them against each other." Queen Vixtha chittered, her translator rendering it as, "The Hive can coordinate defense platforms throughout the system. We can create a network that responds faster than any single species could manage. Each platform will know what every other platform sees and does. The enemy will face not individual defenses but one vast intelligence. Okonkwo listened to each suggestion, then smiled grimly. Good. We will use all of those ideas. But there is one more thing we need. We need to show the galaxy who we really are. Council propaganda says we are barbarians, savages, threats to civilization. We need to prove them wrong. When they come to destroy us, we need to fight with honor. We will not use weapons of mass destruction on planets. We will not target civilians. We will fight like warriors, not monsters. If we die proving that we deserve to exist. The meeting continued late into the night, planning every detail of Earth's defense. They studied the expected Council approach vectors. They positioned defense stations and minefields. They rehearsed tactics and countermeasures. They prepared for every contingency they could imagine. But as Okonkwo sat alone in her quarters after the meeting, she knew that no amount of preparation could guarantee victory. The Council had numbers, resources, and centuries of military experience. The Alliance had courage, innovation, and desperation. It would be enough or it would not. Either way, the galaxy was about to learn what happened when you tried to exterminate those who refused to die. 6 months later, the Grand Armada arrived at the edge of Sol system. 2,317 ships, the largest military force assembled in galactic history. They came in perfect formation, a display meant to intimidate and demoralize. At their head was High Arbiter Velthan himself, commanding from the massive dreadnought inevitable victory. Velthan looked at Earth through his view screen, that small blue world that had caused so much trouble. He thought about the human ambassador who had stood in his chamber 35 years ago, pleading for acceptance. He had rejected her then, certain it was the right decision. Now he would finish what he started. Humanity and its pathetic alliance would be destroyed. The Council's authority would be reasserted. Order would be restored. All ships, he commanded. Advance. Show no mercy. The Terran Alliance ends today. The Armada began moving into the system, engines burning bright enough to be seen from Earth's surface. 2,000 ships advancing in waves, preparing to crush everything in their path. On Earth, billions of people looked up at the sky and saw their doom approaching. Some prayed. Some cried, some simply waited, hoping that their defenders would be enough. In orbit around Earth, aboard the Defiant, Admiral Sarah Okonkwo watched the Council fleet advance. She was in a wheelchair now, too weak to stand, but her mind was still sharp and her will unbreakable. Around her, the Alliance fleet waited, 600 ships, all they could muster for Earth's defense. Outnumbered almost 4-1, Okonkwo opened a channel to every Alliance ship, every defense station, every fighter and drone in the system. They come to destroy us, she said. They come with overwhelming force, certain of victory. They think we will break. They think we will run. They do not understand that we have nowhere to run to, even if we wanted to. This is our home. These are our worlds. These are our people, and we will defend them to our last breath. She paused, gathering her strength. I am old. I have fought in more battles than I can count. I have seen humanity at its worst and at its best. And I tell you now, in this moment facing impossible odds, we are at our best. We stand together, human and alien, not because we are one species, but because we choose to be one people. The Council thinks that makes us weak. They will learn otherwise. For the Terran Alliance, for Earth, for every species that has ever been told they are not good enough. We fight. The Alliance fleet began to move, taking up positions throughout the system. They were outnumbered, outgunned, facing an enemy that wanted them extinct. But they were ready. They were human and Kryn and Seth and Vorn and dozens of other species, united by shared defiance and mutual respect. The Battle of Sol was about to begin, and it would be a battle that would echo through history for thousands of years, not because of who won or lost, but because of what it represented. The moment when the rejected and despised stood against the powerful and proud and refused to yield. The Grand Armada kept advancing, confident and terrible. The Alliance fleet waited, desperate and determined. And between them, the void of space prepared to be filled with fire and death and the birth of something new. The Battle of Sol began not with a dramatic charge, but with mathematics. As the Council's Grand Armada pushed deeper into the solar system, they triggered the first layer of Alliance defenses. Thousands of automated mines positioned by Vorn workers and programmed by Ceph mathematicians activated simultaneously. They did not attack randomly. Each mine calculated the optimal moment to strike, coordinating with every other mine through the Vorn Hive network. The results were devastating. 300 council ships in the vanguard suddenly found themselves surrounded by explosions. Shields flared and failed. Hulls cracked. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before now tumbled through space, venting atmosphere and debris. High Arbiter Veltun watched the carnage from his command deck and felt the first cold touch of doubt. They had lost 47 ships in the opening minutes, and they had not even seen the enemy fleet yet. But he crushed that doubt immediately. They still had over 2,000 ships. The Alliance had at most 600. Numbers would prevail. All ships continue advance, he ordered. Tactical, map those mines and create safe corridors. Sciences, scan for the Alliance fleet. They cannot hide forever. But the Alliance was not hiding. They were hunting. Commander Lisa Torres had divided the Alliance fleet into 20 strike groups, each moving independently through the asteroid belt and around the outer planets. They used the system's natural terrain like guerrilla fighters, striking from unexpected angles and disappearing before the Council could respond. Torres herself commanded Strike Group Alpha, 12 ships including the carrier Victory. They emerged from behind Jupiter's moon Ganymede, fired a full missile salvo at a Council cruiser squadron, and vanished back into the moon's sensor shadow before return fire could find them. The Council squadron lost 4 ships and never even saw their attackers. This happened again and again across the system. Strike groups appeared, attacked, and vanished. The Council fleet tried to maintain formation, but the 3-dimensional battlefield and hit-and-run tactics were shredding their cohesion. Formations broke apart as individual ships or squadrons pursued Alliance vessels, only to be ambushed themselves. General Therax led a different kind of attack. Kryn boarding parties, launched from specially designed assault ships, targeted damaged Council vessels. Once aboard, the Kryn warriors were unstoppable. Their forearms wielded weapons with terrifying efficiency. Their natural armor shrugged off most small arms fire, and their warrior culture meant they never retreated, never surrendered. Within hours, the Kryn had captured 12 Council ships, killing or capturing the crews and turning the vessels' weapons against their former allies. But the Council was not helpless. They had numbers, resources, and experienced commanders. As the battle progressed, they adapted. Council ships began moving in tighter formations, protecting each other. They deployed their own fighter screens to counter Alliance attack craft. They used their superior sensors to track strike groups and set ambushes. The battle became a grinding slugfest, both sides trading losses. Alliance ships fought with desperate ferocity, but for every Council ship they destroyed, they lost ships of their own. The mathematics were brutal. Even with superior tactics and weapons, the Alliance was being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Admiral Okonkwo watched the battle unfold from her command chair. Her body failing but her mind still analyzing every piece of data. She could see it in the numbers. They were losing. Not quickly but steadily. In another 12 hours the Council fleet would break through to Earth orbit and then it would be over. Admiral, her tactical officer reported, we are receiving distress calls from the inner system defense stations. Council heavy cruisers are targeting them with massed fire. Station 7 has been destroyed. Station 12 is critical. Okonkwo made a decision. Signal all strike groups. Fall back to defensive positions around Earth. We hold the line here. Whatever it costs, we hold. The Alliance fleet began pulling back and the Council pressed forward, sensing victory. They pushed through the asteroid belt, past Mars, into the inner system. Earth hung before them, blue and green and beautiful, defended only by the remnants of a fleet that could not possibly stop them. Veltun allowed himself a smile. All ships prepare for orbital bombardment. Humanity ends today. That was when everything changed. 20 ships emerged from quantum space, appearing between the Council fleet and Earth. But these were not Alliance ships. These were Council vessels bearing the insignia of the Delphian Confederacy, one of the member species. For a moment, everyone thought they had come to reinforce the Grand Armada. Then they opened fire on Veltun's flagship. What are you doing? Veltun screamed into the communications channel. We are on the same side. The Delphian commander's face appeared on screen. She looked sad but determined. No, High Arbiter, we are not. The Delphian Confederacy is withdrawing from the Galactic Council. We will not be party to genocide. We will not destroy a civilization that has done nothing except defend itself. Your war ends here. Before Velthun could respond, more ships emerged. Anthari vessels, Zavel cruisers, Quinn destroyers, and ships from 3 more council species announcing their withdrawal and their refusal to continue the war. 60 ships in total, turning against the council fleet they had been part of minutes before. The Grand Armada descended into chaos. Some ships immediately broke formation, their captains questioning whether they should even be fighting. Others opened fire on the turncoats, splitting the council fleet into warring factions. And through it all, the Alliance fleet pressed forward, taking advantage of the confusion. This was the moment Torres had been waiting for. All strike groups full attack. Target the most aggressive council vessels. Protect the ships that have sided with us. Show them they made the right choice. The battle became 3-sided chaos. Loyalist council ships fought both the Alliance and Rebel council vessels. The Rebels fought to protect themselves and increasingly to help the Alliance. And the Alliance fought to survive and to show their new unexpected allies that they were worth supporting. In the middle of it all, High Arbiter Velthun's dreadnought Inevitable Victory became the focus of concentrated fire. Alliance missiles, Rebel energy beams, and Kryn boarding parties all converged on the massive ship. Its shields, designed to withstand anything, began to fail under the impossible barrage. Velthun stood on his bridge watching his perfect plan collapse into disaster. How had this happened? How had the inferior humans done this? They should have been crushed. They should have surrendered. They should have accepted their place. The answer came to him as his ship shuddered from another impact. They had never accepted their place. That was the entire point. Humanity did not accept limits. They did not accept rejection. They did not accept fate, and that spirit had infected other species, made them question the Council's authority, made them think that maybe the old ways were not the only ways. All hands, abandon ship, Velthun ordered quietly. He could have fought to the end, gone down with his vessel. But he was not a warrior. He was a bureaucrat who had believed in his own superiority so completely that he could not imagine losing. Now facing defeat, he only wanted to survive. The escape pods launched. Most of them made it to other council ships. Velthun's pod was intercepted by a Kryn assault craft. He was taken prisoner, dragged aboard a ship where warriors twice his size looked at him with contempt. Minutes later, the Inevitable Victory exploded, its reactor overloading. The flagship of the Grand Armada died in a ball of nuclear fire, and with it died the Council's hope of easy victory. The battle raged on for 6 more hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. With their commander captured and their fleet split by rebellion, the Loyalist Council forces began withdrawing. Some surrendered. Some fled into hyperspace. Some fought to the bitter end and were destroyed. When the guns finally fell silent, Earth still stood. The planet was scarred, its orbital infrastructure damaged, but it survived. More importantly, it had proven something that would echo across the galaxy. The Terran Alliance could not be destroyed by force. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo did not live to see the final victory. Her heart gave out 3 hours before the last council ship surrendered. She died in her command chair, watching the battle she had orchestrated, knowing that Earth would survive. Her last words, recorded by the ship's logs, were simple. We held the line. Commander Torres assumed command of the Alliance fleet and oversaw the aftermath of the battle. The losses were staggering on all sides. The Alliance had lost 270 ships. The Council Loyalists had lost over 800. The rebel forces had lost 30. Hundreds of thousands were dead. The space around Earth was filled with debris and the frozen bodies of those who had fought and died. But the political consequences were even more dramatic than the military ones. Within days of the Battle of Sol, 6 more Council species announced their withdrawal from the Galactic Council. They cited the same reasons the Delphians had. The war was unjust, the Council had overreached its authority, and the Terran Alliance had proven it deserved to exist. The Galactic Council, which had ruled civilized space for 3,000 years, was collapsing. Member species were leaving. Others were demanding reforms. The Keltaran Empire, humiliated by the defeat and the loss of their High Arbiter, retreated into isolationism. The whole structure that had maintained galactic order was crumbling. Chen Rodriguez, now the undisputed leader of the Terran Alliance after Okonkwo's death, faced an enormous decision. The Alliance had won, but at terrible cost. They could press their advantage, continue the war, perhaps even conquer council space. Or they could do something different, something that no victorious power in galactic history had ever done. She called a meeting of the Alliance Assembly, the governing body that included representatives from every member species. The chamber was filled with beings from dozens of worlds, all waiting to hear what humanity's leader would propose. "We have won," Chen told them. "We have proven that we cannot be destroyed. The Council's Grand Armada is broken. Their member species are abandoning them. We could, if we wished, march on Kepler Station and take control of the Council itself. We could become what they were, the dominant power imposing our will on the galaxy." She paused, looking at each representative in turn. "But we will not do that. We did not fight this war to become conquerors. We fought to prove we had the right to exist. We fought for the principle that no species is superior to another, that all civilizations deserve respect. If we now turn around and impose our will on others, we betray everything we claim to believe." General Therax, sitting in a specially reinforced chair, designed to hold his massive frame, spoke up. "What do you propose, Prime Minister? The Council still exists. The species that supported them still command vast fleets. If we do not secure our victory, they may rebuild and attack us again." "I propose we build something new," Chen said. "Not the Galactic Council, with its hierarchy and its judgment of worthy and unworthy species. Not the Terran Alliance, which is defined by our rejection from that council. Something better. A galactic assembly where every species, great and small, has an equal voice, where decisions are made by consensus, not by the powerful dictating to the weak, where membership is voluntary and based on mutual respect, not conquest or coercion." Celendis, her mathematical mind already working through the implications, nodded slowly. "Such a structure would be difficult to manage. How do you ensure that important decisions get made when you need consensus from dozens of species?" "We accept that it will be messy," Chen replied. "We accept that it will be slow sometimes. We accept that it will be frustrating. But it will be just. And justice is worth some inefficiency." Queen Vixtha chittered her agreement. "The Hive approves. We have spent 35 years building something different from the Council. We should not become what we fought against." The debate continued for hours. Some representatives wanted guarantees that the Alliance would maintain military superiority, just in case. Others worried that former Council species would try to dominate any new organization. But in the end, the vision Chen proposed won overwhelming support. The Terran Alliance sent envoys throughout the galaxy, to Council species and non-aligned worlds alike. The message was simple: the old order is dead. We invite you to help build something new. The Galactic Assembly will be founded on 3 principles: sovereign equality of all member species, peaceful resolution of disputes, and mutual cooperation for the benefit of all. Some species rejected the invitation. The Kelteran Empire, bitter and humiliated, closed its borders and refused all contact. A few other species did the same, retreating into isolation. But most of the galaxy, tired of war and intrigued by the promise of a more just system, sent representatives to the founding conference. The conference was held on Earth, in the same building where Chen had coordinated colonial affairs during the long night. Delegates from 83 species gathered, including many former council members. The Delphians were there, honored as heroes for their stand at Sol. The Kryn were there, no longer rejected outcasts, but respected warriors. The Ceph, the Vorn, and all the other species that had formed the original alliance were there. And humans were there, not as rulers or conquerors, but as organizers and facilitators. Chen Rodriguez, now in her 80s and knowing these would be her final years of service, was elected as the first Secretary General of the Galactic Assembly. It was fitting. She had been present at humanity's rejection by the Council 35 years earlier. Now she presided over the creation of something better. The Galactic Assembly's founding charter was simple but revolutionary. All member species were equal regardless of size, population, or technological advancement. No species could be forced to join or prevented from leaving. Disputes would be resolved through arbitration and negotiation, with force only as a last resort for self-defense. Technology and knowledge would be shared freely among members. No species would be judged as worthy or unworthy based on subjective criteria. It was everything the Galactic Council had not been, and the galaxy embraced it. The Terran Alliance formally dissolved itself, its member species joining the Galactic Assembly as individual members. But the bonds forged during the long night remained. Humans and Kryn still served together on military vessels. Seth still taught at human universities. Vorn still coordinated complex engineering projects with human partners. The friendship between species that had been born in isolation and tested in war became the foundation of the new galactic order. High Arbiter Vel Thun, held as a prisoner of war throughout the political transformation, was eventually released and returned to Kelteran space. He was not executed, not imprisoned long-term, not even humiliated publicly. The Terran Alliance and then the Galactic Assembly treated him with the same mercy they would have wanted for their own captured personnel. It was a mercy he had never intended to show humanity. He lived the rest of his life in obscurity, watching from his homeworld as the galaxy he thought he understood transformed into something he could barely recognize. Sometimes late at night he thought about the human ambassador who had stood in his chamber so long ago. She had asked for justice and he had given her rejection. In response, she and her species had built something better than justice. They had built hope. Commander Lisa Torres, promoted to admiral after the Battle of Sol, took over as supreme commander of what became the Assembly Defense Force. It was a military designed not for conquest, but for protection, defending the principles of the Assembly against those who would undermine them. Under her leadership, the Defense Force became known for its professionalism, its restraint, and its absolute refusal to become an instrument of oppression. General Therax lived to see the Kryn fully integrated into galactic society, no longer seen as dangerous barbarians but as noble warriors who fought for honor and protected those who could not protect themselves. He established the Kryn Academy on Earth, where warriors from all species could train together. Before he died at the age of 72, ancient for a Kryn, he told his students, "Humanity taught us that strength without honor is just bullying. We taught humanity that honor without strength is just words. Together we are both strong and honorable." Dr. Marcus Webb continued his research, now with access to scientific knowledge from 83 different civilizations. He made breakthrough after breakthrough, always crediting the Ceph mathematicians, Vorn engineers, and scientists from dozens of other species who collaborated with him. When he won the first Galactic Assembly Prize for Scientific Achievement, he used his acceptance speech to say, "The Council hoarded knowledge, keeping secrets to maintain power. We share knowledge, and in sharing we all become stronger. That is the difference between empire and community." On Earth, monuments were built to those who had died in the long night and the wars that followed. The largest was a simple black wall in Geneva, listing every name of every being who had died defending the principles the Assembly now stood for. Human names, Kryn names, Ceph names, Vorn names, and dozens of others. At the top of the wall were words that Chen Rodriguez had written. "They tried to make us disappear. We built a kingdom in the darkness, and when we emerged, we brought light for all." Chen Rodriguez herself served as Secretary General for 10 years, long enough to see the Galactic Assembly firmly established and functioning. She retired at 92, returning to Earth to spend her final years writing her memoirs. She called the book The Long Night, and it became required reading in schools across the galaxy. She died peacefully in her sleep at 97, surrounded by family and friends from a dozen different species. Her funeral was attended by representatives from every member of the Galactic Assembly. The Kryn sent a honor guard. The Ceph composed a mathematical proof so beautiful it brought people to tears. The Vorn built a living memorial, a garden that would grow and change but never die, just like Chen's legacy. 50 years after the Battle of Sol, a young Kelteran student named Jenthral sat in a classroom on her homeworld, learning about galactic history. Her teacher, an old educator who had lived through the transformation, explained what had happened when the Galactic Council had rejected humanity. "They were arrogant," the teacher said. "We were arrogant. We thought we knew better. We thought we could judge who was worthy and who was not. We thought that isolating those we deemed dangerous would keep us safe. We were wrong about all of it." A student raised a tentacle. "But teacher, the history says humans were aggressive and unpredictable. Were we wrong to be concerned?" The teacher smiled sadly. "We were not wrong to be concerned. Humans are aggressive and unpredictable. But we were wrong about what that meant. We thought those traits made them dangerous to us. We did not understand that those traits also made them survivors, innovators, and builders. We saw their weapons and their wars and missed their art, their compassion, and their ability to unite disparate peoples. We judged them for their worst moments and ignored their potential for greatness. What happened to the Galactic Council? Another student asked. It collapsed, the teacher replied. When member species saw an alternative, when they saw that cooperation was possible without hierarchy, they abandoned the council. Some of us, like the Kelterans, were too proud to join the assembly for many years. We isolated ourselves just as we had tried to isolate humanity. But isolation is death, slow and lonely. Eventually, even we joined. Even I, who voted to reject humanity's petition all those years ago, now teach in a curriculum designed by humans, Ceph and Vorn working together. I teach my students that our greatest mistake was not our cruelty but our certainty. We were certain we were right. Humans proved us wrong. Do you regret it? The first student asked. Rejecting them? The teacher thought about this for a long moment. Every day. But I also appreciate what came from it. If we had accepted humanity into the council, they would have tried to fit into our system. They would have adapted to our ways. Instead, forced to survive on their own, they built something better than we ever had. Sometimes the greatest gifts come from the worst mistakes. Humanity was our mistake. The Galactic Assembly was their gift to us in return. The lesson ended and the students filed out, chattering about what they had learned. The teacher remained looking at an image on her display. It was the monument in Geneva, that black wall covered with names. So many names. So many people who had died because the council had been too proud and too fearful to accept something different. But they had not died for nothing. They had died so that the galaxy could learn a lesson it desperately needed. That diversity was strength. That cooperation was better than domination. That no species had the right to judge another as unworthy of existence. It was a painful lesson, bought with blood and suffering. But it was a lesson the galaxy would never forget. In the centuries that followed, the Galactic Assembly grew and prospered. New species were discovered and welcomed as equals. Old conflicts were resolved through dialogue instead of war. Technologies advanced as species shared knowledge freely. Culture flourished as artists and philosophers from different worlds collaborated and inspired each other. And at the heart of it all was the memory of the long night, when humanity and its allies had been cast aside and had responded by building something better than anyone thought possible. It became a symbol, a reminder that the worst circumstances could bring out the best in people. That rejection could become motivation. That isolation could forge unity. That darkness could give birth to light. The galaxy had tried to ban humanity. Humanity had responded by building a kingdom, and that kingdom, built on principles of equality and respect, had shown the galaxy a better way forward. It was the most human thing imaginable. Faced with impossible odds and unjust treatment, they had simply refused to give up. They had survived, thrived, and in doing so changed everything. High above Earth, in the orbital space where the Battle of Sol had been fought, a memorial station now floated. Visitors from all over the galaxy came to see the place where the old order had died and the new order had been born. They looked out at the blue planet below and tried to imagine what it had been like for the people down there, watching a fleet of 2,000 ships approaching to destroy them. And they read the plaque that had been placed there with words written in every language of every assembly member species. Here, humanity stood against those who sought to erase them. Here, allies old and new fought side by side for the right to exist. Here, the powerful learned that force alone cannot destroy the determined. Here, the galaxy learned that those who survive rejection become the strongest of all. Remember this place. Remember these people. Remember that kingdoms are not built by the powerful forcing their will on others, but by the determined building something worth defending. The story of humanity's rejection and rise became the founding myth of the Galactic Assembly, told and retold across worlds and cultures. Parents told it to children. Teachers told it to students. Leaders invoked it when facing difficult decisions. It was a reminder of what was possible when people refused to accept the limits others placed on them. And on Earth, in the city where Chen Rodriguez had once returned from Kepler Station to report humanity's rejection, a new generation of humans grew up knowing they were part of something greater than themselves. They had not lived through the long night. They had not fought in the Battle of Sol. But they carried the legacy of those who had, the knowledge that their ancestors had faced extinction and responded with defiance, courage, and the unshakable human conviction that a better future was always possible if you were willing to fight for it. The galaxy had banned humanity, Humanity had defied them, and in defying them, humanity had saved not just themselves but everyone. The kingdom they built in darkness became a light for the entire galaxy, and that light would never be extinguished.
Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the center of the massive Galactic Council chamber. The room was huge, bigger than any building on Earth. Strange alien beings filled the seats that rose up in circles around her. Some looked like giant insects with shiny shells. Others had multiple eyes or tentacles instead of arms. A few creatures seemed to be made of living crystal that sparkled under the bright lights. Elena felt small among all these powerful aliens, but she did not show her fear. She had been chosen to represent humanity because she was brave and smart. Today, she had to present Earth's military ideas to the Council. She hoped they would accept humans as equal partners in their war against the enemy forces called a hegemony. The holographic projector began to show images above her head. The first picture showed human soldiers jumping from a craft high in the sky. Their parachutes opened like giant flowers as they fell toward the ground below. The soldiers carried weapons and equipment as they drifted down to land behind enemy lines. "These are our paratroopers," Elena said in a clear voice. "They can reach places that ground forces cannot. They can attack the enemy from unexpected directions. They are fast, quiet, and very effective in battle." For a moment, the chamber was silent. Then a sound started from one of the alien seats. It was a strange clicking noise that grew louder and louder. Other aliens began making different sounds. Some hissed like angry snakes. Others made high singing noises. Elena realized with horror that they were all laughing at her. The clicking sound came from Delegate Krextor, who looked like a giant beetle with 4 arms and a shiny black shell. His mouth parts moved rapidly as he made the clicking laugh sounds. "Paratroopers," he said through his translator device. "Your species throws soldiers from the sky like garbage from a waste ship." Elena felt her face grow hot with embarrassment, but she stood straight and did not speak. She had expected this reaction. The other humans in the Earth delegation looked uncomfortable in their seats. Some of them stared at the floor. A tall, thin alien with 4 eyes stood up from his seat. This was General Vorthek, commander of the Council's flying cavalry forces. His 4 eyes blinked one at a time as he spoke. "In our time of advanced weapons and energy shields, humans choose to make their soldiers fall from the sky? This is your great military innovation." The translator had trouble with his words because the idea seemed so strange to alien minds. The Vorthek had flying creatures that could carry warriors through the air with grace and speed. The idea of just dropping soldiers with fabric parachutes seemed completely backward to them. More laughter came from around the chamber. The snake-like Cythrians made hissing sounds that meant they found something very funny. Their long bodies curved and twisted in their special seats as they expressed their amusement. The crystal beings called Zephyrians made musical chiming sounds that normally were beautiful, but now sounded mocking and cruel. Elena watched as even some of the other human representatives from Earth looked embarrassed by her presentation. Admiral Chen from the Earth Space Navy stared at his hands. General Rodriguez from the Army shook his head slightly. They had argued against this presentation, saying it would make humans look primitive compared to the advanced alien civilizations. From the highest seat in the chamber, High Counselor Thexran spoke. He was an ancient being who looked like a huge stone statue that had come to life. His people had conquered hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. His voice was deep and rough like rocks grinding together. "Primitive," he said, and the words seemed to echo through the chamber. "Humans continue to bring us military ideas that are thousands of years out of date. While we fight with plasma cannons and energy shields, they want to use falling soldiers with fabric wings." Other council members nodded their heads or made sounds of agreement. The insect-like Krillians buzzed among themselves. The tall, proud draconians snorted through their nose holes. Even the peaceful cetacean delegates, who looked like space whales, made low singing sounds that expressed disappointment. "Perhaps," continued High Counselor Thexran, "it is time for this council to reconsider whether humans deserve full membership in our alliance. Their military contributions have been limited." Elena felt anger growing inside her chest, but she kept her face calm and expressionless. She had known this moment would come. The alien species in the council were thousands of years more advanced than humans. They had weapons that could destroy entire planets. They could travel between stars faster than light. Their armies had conquered enemies across the galaxy. But they did not understand humans. They did not understand what made humans dangerous in war. They saw only the simple technology and thought it meant humans were weak or stupid. They could not imagine that sometimes the simplest solutions were the most effective ones. A delegate from the proud Draconian Empire stood up. He was covered in scales and had wings folded on his back. "We have given humans small roles in our battles against the hegemony," he said, "but their performance has been adequate at best. They lack the natural weapons that evolution gave our warriors. They have no armor-like skin, no poison, no natural ability to fly." More voices joined in from around the chamber. The plant-like Vidanians spoke through chemical smells that their translators changed into words. Human soldiers move slowly compared to our root warriors who can travel underground at great speed. The energy beings called Luminians flickered brighter as they spoke. Human weapons seemed crude next to our ability to direct pure energy with our thoughts. Elena listened to all of this criticism without changing her expression. Inside, she was planning. Let them think humans were primitive and weak. Let them believe that parachutes and rifles were the best that humanity could offer. They would learn the truth soon enough. The laughter continued for several more minutes. Aliens throughout the chamber shared jokes about humans and their falling soldiers. Some made gestures with their appendages that imitated humans floating down on parachutes. Others made comments about how humans might hurt themselves when they landed. Finally, High Counselor Thexran raised one massive stone hand for silence. The chamber became quiet, but Elena could still feel the amusement and mockery in the air like a bad smell. "Ambassador Vasquez," the High Counselor said, "does humanity have any other military innovations to present to this council? Perhaps soldiers who travel by walking, or weapons that require direct physical contact with the enemy?" This brought another wave of laughter from the assembled aliens. Elena knew she was being insulted, but she also knew that every insult, every laugh, every moment of mockery was being recorded by Earth's intelligence services. Her people would remember this day. They would remember who had laughed at humanity's warriors. "No, High Counselor," Elena said in a steady voice. "The paratrooper presentation concludes Earth's contribution to today's military planning session." "Very well," Thexran replied. "This council will take humanity's suggestions under advisement. We now move to discuss real military strategies from our more experienced member species." Elena gathered her materials and walked back to the human section of the chamber. As she sat down, Admiral Chen leaned over and whispered, "That could have gone better." Elena looked at him with eyes that were hard as steel. "Could it?" she asked quietly. "Wait and see, Admiral. Wait and see." The council meeting continued for several more hours as alien species presented their advanced military technologies and strategies. Elena listened to it all, taking careful notes. She learned about their strengths, their tactics, and most importantly, their weaknesses. Every species was proud of their natural advantages and technological superiority. None of them seemed to understand that humanity's greatest weapon was not their parachutes or rifles. Humanity's greatest weapon was that everyone underestimated them. 3 months had passed since the Galactic Council had laughed at the human paratroopers. The laughter had stopped completely now. In the Great Council chamber, alien representatives sat in worried silence as they stared at the holographic display floating above the center floor. The image showed a massive fortress built into the side of a tall cliff on a dead planet called Zirian Prime. The fortress was called Kethmore, and it had become the most important military target in the galaxy. For over 2 years, the enemy forces known as a hegemony had held this fortress against every attack the Council could launch. Admiral Kextor of the Krillian fleet stood at his station with his 4 arms crossed over his insect-like chest. His shell was darker than usual, which meant he was very stressed. "Our latest orbital bombardment failed again," he reported to the Council. "The fortress energy shields absorbed 90% of our weapons fire. The remaining 10% did almost no damage to their structures." The hologram zoomed in to show the details of the fortress. It was built like a metal mountain growing out of the cliff face. Huge energy cannons pointed in every direction from its walls. Smaller weapons covered every inch of space around the fortress. Shield generators created a glowing bubble of protection that covered the entire structure. "The hegemony has developed new shield technology," continued Admiral Kextor. "Their shields learn from each attack. Every time we fire the same type of weapon, the shield become better at stopping it. Our plasma cannons now do almost nothing against their defenses. General Ithos of the Draconian Legion spread his large wings in frustration. His scales were bright red, showing his anger. My warriors attempted a direct assault last week, he growled. We lost 3,000 soldiers in the first hour. The fortress weapons cut down my best fighters like grass before a cutting machine. The other council members made sounds of sympathy and worry. The Draconians were known as the fiercest warriors in the galaxy. If they could not take the fortress, many wondered if anyone could. Elena Vasquez sat quietly in the human section, listening to each failed battle report. The Earth delegation was much smaller than the alien groups. Humans were still not considered full members of the council. They were allowed to observe and sometimes speak, but they had no real power in military decisions. Delegate Cithros of the Serpent People spoke next. His long body coiled and uncoiled nervously as he talked. My infiltration specialist tried to tunnel under the fortress walls. The hegemony has deep sensors that can detect movement far underground. We lost an entire commando unit to their automated defense systems. The crystalline being Zephyrine chimed in with musical tones that the translators changed the words. Our energy manipulation abilities cannot penetrate their shields. The fortress generators create interference patterns that block our natural powers. More reports came from around the chamber. The plant-like Vidanians had tried growing attack vines up the cliff face, but the fortress had flame weapons that burned everything to ash. The technological mechanics had sent robot armies, but the hegemony had hacking systems that turned the robot against their creators. Each species had tried to use their greatest strengths against the fortress. Each had failed completely. High Counselor Thexran sat like a stone mountain in his chair at the top of the chamber. His ancient face showed no emotion as he listened to the endless list of defeats. Finally, he spoke in his deep, grinding voice. The fortress of Kethmore cannot be taken by conventional methods, he announced. We have lost more ships and soldiers in 2 years of fighting than in the previous 10 years of war against the hegemony. Perhaps it is time to accept that Zirian Prime is lost to us. Worried voices rose from around the chamber. Losing Zirian Prime would be a huge defeat for the Council. The planet controlled important space routes that connected many star systems. If the hegemony kept the fortress, they could attack Council worlds throughout that region of space. But High Counselor, said Commander Vex of the Vorthak Flying Cavalry, if we abandon Zirian Prime, the hegemony will use it as a base to launch attacks on 7 different Council worlds. Millions of our people live on those planets. Then what do you suggest? Asked Thexran. We have tried every known military tactic. The fortress has defenses that stop orbital bombardment, ground assault, underground attack, aerial assault, energy manipulation, robotic warfare, and biological weapons. Our best generals and admirals have studied this problem for months. There is no solution. Elena had been listening carefully to every word. She knew that this was the moment she had been waiting for. Slowly, she stood up from her seat in the human section. Her movement was small compared to the giant aliens around her, but somehow everyone in the chamber noticed. High Counselor, she said in a clear voice, humanity requests permission to speak. A sound like wind through dry leaves filled the chamber as aliens made noises of surprise and annoyance. Why would the primitive humans want to speak about military strategy? They had already embarrassed themselves with their paratrooper presentation months ago. Thexran looked down at the small human woman for a long moment. Ambassador Vasquez, he said, this council is discussing serious military matters, advanced tactics and technologies beyond your species' understanding. Elena did not show any anger at the insult. I understand, High Counselor, but I have a simple question about the fortress defenses. Some of the alien delegates made sound that might have been laughter. Others whispered among themselves in their strange languages. What could humans possibly understand about advanced fortress design that the greatest military minds in the galaxy had missed? Very well, said Thexran. Ask your question. Elena looked up at the holographic image of the fortress. She studied it carefully, as if seeing it for the first time. The energy shields, she said. What are they designed to stop? General Ithos snorted through his nose holes. Large objects moving at high speed, he answered impatiently. Starships, missiles, artillery shells, energy beams. Any serious military threat. And the automated defense systems. Elena continued. Admiral Kexthor clicked his mandibles in annoyance. They track and destroy incoming aircraft, ground vehicles, and large groups of soldiers. The targeting computers can handle thousands of threats at the same time. Elena nodded slowly. And the weapons placements? They cover every approach to the fortress, said Commander Vex. No aircraft can fly close enough to land troops. No ground force can cross the open area around the fortress. The weapons have overlapping fields of fire with no blind spots. I see, said Elena. She was quiet for a moment, thinking. The entire chamber waited to hear what the human would say next. Most of the aliens expected her to admit that the fortress was impossible to attack, just like everyone else had concluded. Instead, Elena looked directly at High Counselor Thexran. Give us 24 hours, she said. The silence that followed was so complete that the ventilation system seemed loud. Aliens stared at the small human woman, as if she had said something completely insane. Some of them wondered if the translation systems had made an error. Give you 24 hours for what? Asked Thexran slowly. To take the fortress, Elena replied calmly. The chamber erupted in noise. Aliens made sounds of disbelief, anger, and confusion. Some laughed so hard they could barely stay in their seats. Others shouted that humans were either crazy or trying to make jokes during a serious military discussion. General Ithos stood up to his full height, his wings spread wide. This is ridiculous, he roared. The combined might of the Galactic Council has failed for 2 years. The best warriors and weapons in the galaxy cannot crack those defenses. What makes you think a handful of primitive humans can succeed where we have failed? Elena looked around the chamber at all the angry, confused, and mocking faces. She remembered the laughter from 3 months ago when she had presented the paratrooper concept. She remembered every insult and every dismissive comment about human military capabilities. Because, she said quietly, but her voice carried every corner of the chamber, you have all been thinking like aliens. The noise in the chamber grew even louder. Some delegates demanded that humans be removed from the session for wasting everyone's time. Others wanted to know what Elena meant by her strange comment. High Counselor Thexran raised his massive hand for silence. When the chamber became quiet, he looked down at Elena with something that might have been curiosity. Explain yourself, Ambassador. Elena smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. You have all tried to defeat the fortress using your greatest strengths. Your advanced technology, your natural abilities, your sophisticated weapons. But the fortress was built to stop exactly those kinds of attacks. And, prompted Thexran. Sometimes the solution is not to be more advanced, Elena said. Sometimes the solution is to be more simple. She paused and looked around the chamber again. Give us our 24 hours, High Counselor. If we fail, humanity will accept whatever decision this council makes about our membership status. We will never again request to participate in military planning. And if you somehow succeed, asked Thexran. Elena's smile became wider and more confident. Then perhaps this council will finally understand why humans have survived on a dangerous planet for thousands of years, and why our paratroopers might be more effective than you think. The chamber fell silent again as the alien delegates considered this proposal. Most of them thought it was impossible for humans to succeed where they had failed. But Elena's confidence was strange and unsettling. She seemed to know something they did not. Finally, High Counselor Thexran made his decision. Very well, Ambassador Vasquez. Humanity has 24 hours to attempt what the greatest military forces in the galaxy could not accomplish. When you fail, remember that this council gave you every opportunity to prove your worth. Elena bowed her head respectfully. Thank you, High Counselor. We will not forget your generosity. As the council session ended and aliens began filing out of the chamber, many of them continued to discuss the humans' impossible claim. Some thought it was a desperate act of a species trying to avoid being removed from the Alliance. Others wondered if humans had some secret weapon they had not revealed. Elena remained in her seat as the chamber emptied. She was already making mental preparations for what would come next. In 24 hours, the galaxy would learn what humans were truly capable when they stopped playing by everyone else's rules. High above the dead planet Zirion Prime, the human dropship Valkyrie hung in space like a metal bird waiting to strike. The ship was old and scarred from many battles. Its hull had burn marks from enemy weapons and dent from flying through dangerous asteroid fields. But the humans inside trusted this ship with their lives. Master Sergeant Jake Morrison sat in the cargo bay checking his equipment one more time. He was a big man with strong hands and calm eyes. His face had scars from previous battles, and his hair was starting to turn gray. He had been jumping out of aircraft for 15 years, but this mission was different from all the others. Around him sat 11 other human soldiers. Each one was a specialist in different types of combat. They wore black armor that looked simple compared to alien technology, but it was designed specifically for what they needed to do today. Their weapons were basic rifles and explosives that most aliens would consider primitive. "Listen up," Morrison said to his team. His voice was steady and confident even though they were about to attempt something that many people would call impossible. "Down there's Fortress Kethmore. For 2 years, the best armies in the galaxy have tried to crack it open. Today, we show them what humans can do." Corporal Lisa Chen looked up from the bomb she was preparing. She was small and quick with bright, intelligent eyes. Her specialty was making things explode at exactly the right time and place. "Sarge, the fortress has enough firepower to destroy a fleet of starships. How are we supposed to get past all those defenses?" Morrison smiled grimly. "Because we are not going to fight their defenses, Chen. We are going to ignore them." Sergeant Williams, the team's heavy weapons expert, laughed quietly. He was almost as big as Morrison and carried a plasma rifle that could punch holes through tank armor. The aliens spent so much time making fancy shields and weapons, they forgot the most basic rule of warfare. "Which is?" asked Private Lopez, the youngest member of the team. "Always watch the sky," Morrison answered. The plan was simple in the way that all good military plans were simple. While the Galactic Council's forces launched another attack on the fortress from the front, Morrison's team would jump from high altitude directly onto the fortress itself. They would fall through the planet's atmosphere faster than the defensive systems could track them. "The energy shields are designed to stop big objects like spaceships and missiles," Morrison explained. "They are not set up to detect individual soldiers falling from space. We will be too small and too fast for their computers to lock on to us." Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the team's electronic specialist, checked her hacking equipment. "And once we get inside their shield perimeter, we can shut down their defenses from the inside." "The fortress designers made one big mistake," continued Morrison. "They built their defenses to keep enemies out, but they did not think about what would happen if enemies were already inside." The soldiers had trained for this mission for 3 months in secret. They had practiced jumping from extreme altitudes, landing on small targets, and fighting in enclosed spaces. Earth's military leaders had chosen these 12 soldiers from thousands of volunteers. Each one was the best at what they did. "Remember the objective," Morrison said. "We are not trying to destroy the fortress. We are trying to capture it intact. The Galactic Council needs the intelligence files stored in the fortress computers. Those files contain information about hegemony military plans that could end this war." The ship's pilot, Captain Rodriguez, spoke over the intercom from the flight deck. "Approaching drop zone. Fortress defenses are focusing on the Council's attack force. They have not detected us yet." Morrison stood up and walked to the large window that showed the planet below. Zirion Prime looked like a dead rock floating in space. Its surface was covered with gray dust and black craters from old battles. The fortress was a small dark spot on the planet's surface, but Morrison knew it was much larger than it appeared from this distance. 30 miles straight down, he said quietly, "through an atmosphere that will kill us if our suits fail, past weapons that can vaporize starships, into a fortress that has never been conquered." The other soldiers gathered around him at the window. They looked down at their target with the calm expressions of people who had accepted that they might die today. But they also had something else in their eyes. They had determination and confidence that came from knowing they were about to prove something important. "Why did you volunteer for this mission?" Morrison asked the group. "Because someone told me it was impossible," answered Chen with a grin. "Because I am tired of aliens thinking humans are weak," said Williams. "Because this is what we were born to do," added Kim. One by one, the other soldiers gave their answers. Some wanted to prove themselves. Others wanted to help end the war. A few just enjoyed the challenge of doing something that had never been done before. But all of them shared one thing in common. They were humans, and humans did not give up when things looked hopeless. "The aliens have better technology than us," Morrison said. They have natural abilities we do not have. They can do things that we cannot do. But they have one weakness that they do not even know about. What is that, Sarge? Asked Lopez. They think logically, Morrison replied. They make plans based on what makes sense. They attack fortresses the way fortresses are supposed to be attacked. They fight wars the way wars are supposed to be fought. The red warning light began flashing in the cargo bay. This meant they were 5 minutes from the drop zone. The soldiers began putting on their helmets and checking their parachutes one final time. But humans, Morrison continued, humans do crazy things. We try solutions that do not make sense. We attack problems from directions that no one expects. We succeed because we are willing to do what others think is impossible. The soldiers lined up at the drop bay doors. Each one carried enough equipment to survive on the hostile planet's surface and fight their way through the fortress. They had studied maps of the fortress layout until they could navigate its corridors blindfolded. They knew where every important system was located. 2 minutes to drop, announced Captain Rodriguez. Morrison looked at his team one more time. These 11 soldiers represented the best that humanity had to offer. They were not the strongest or the fastest or the smartest warriors in the galaxy, but they had something that no alien species possessed. They had the human ability to look at an impossible situation and find a way to make it possible. The drop bay doors began to open with a loud mechanical sound. Beyond the doors was a black emptiness of space and the gray planet below. The fortress was visible now as a small collection of lights on the planet's dark surface. Remember, Morrison said over the communication system, we are not just fighting for the mission today. We are fighting to show the galaxy what humans are capable of. Every alien who laughed at our paratroopers will remember this day. The doors finished opening. Cold air rushed out of the ship as the atmosphere escaped into space. The soldiers stood at the edge of the opening, looking down at the planet that waited 30 miles below them. For the first time in galactic history, Morrison announced, a fortress that was built to be impregnable is about to be conquered by soldiers falling from the sky. He paused and looked at each member of his team. Any questions? The soldiers shook their heads. They were ready. Good, said Morrison. Let us go show the galaxy why Earth produces the best soldiers in the universe. The green light flashed on. Morrison stepped forward to the edge of the drop bay. Behind him, his 11 teammates prepared to follow him into the void. For humanity, Morrison said simply. Then he jumped. One by one, the other soldiers followed him out of the ship and into the darkness. 12 small figures fell away from the Valkyrie and began their long journey down to the planet below. From space, they looked like tiny dots against the vastness of the universe. But those 12 dots were about to change the course of galactic history. The fall through space felt like diving into a black ocean. Morrison watched his altitude meter as the numbers dropped quickly. 30,000 feet, 25,000 feet, 20,000 feet. Around him, his 11 teammates fell like silent arrows through the darkness. At first, the fortress below looked like a tiny spark of light against the gray planet's surface. But as they fell faster and faster, the spark grew larger. Morrison could see the outline of the massive structure built into the cliff face. He could see the energy shields glowing like a blue bubble around the entire fortress. The first challenge came when they reached 25,000 feet. The fortress's long-range sensors finally detected something falling from space. Morrison watched his display screen as warning signals began flashing all around the fortress. The enemy knew something was coming, but they did not know what it was. Red beams of energy suddenly shot up from the fortress like deadly fingers reaching into the sky. The beams moved back and forth, searching for targets. Morrison had expected this. The fortress weapons were designed to destroy large, slow-moving objects like spaceships and missiles. The beams swept through the area where normal attack would come from. But the 12 humans were not following normal attack patterns. They were small, fast, and spread out across a wide area of sky. The energy beams passed close to Morrison, so close he could feel the heat through his armor. But the weapon systems could not lock onto targets that were too small and moving too unpredictably. Stay scattered. Morrison shouted into his radio. Do not group together. Make yourselves hard to hit. The soldiers spread out even more as they continued falling. Each one used small rocket thrusters built into their armor to change direction suddenly. They moved like leaves falling in a strong wind, impossible to predict or track accurately. At 20,000 feet, the fortress's missile defense systems activated. Morrison saw dozens of small rockets launch from hidden positions around the fortress walls. The missiles streaked upward, their guidance systems trying to lock onto the falling soldiers. This was the most dangerous part of the descent. The missiles were faster and smarter than the energy beams. They could change direction quickly and chase moving targets. Morrison watched his display as 3 missiles turned toward his position. He fired his side thrusters and dove to the left just as the first missile passed through the space where he had been. The second missile followed him, but he used his rear thrusters to speed up his fall. The missile could not match his sudden change in velocity and shot past him into empty space. The third missile was smarter. It predicted where Morrison would be and aimed for that spot instead of where he was. Morrison saw it coming and made a desperate choice. He fired all his thrusters at once, spinning himself like a top while still falling downward. The missile's guidance system could not handle the spinning target. It exploded harmlessly 50 feet away from Morrison. The blast wave hit him and made his armor system flicker, but he was still alive and still falling toward the target. Around him, other soldiers were fighting their own battles with the missiles. Morrison saw Corporal Martinez get hit by a direct strike. The explosion lit up the sky for a moment, and then Martinez was gone. Morrison felt a stab of pain in his chest, but he forced himself to stay focused on the mission. "Martinez is down," reported Sergeant Williams over the radio. "Stay focused," Morrison replied, though his own heart was breaking. Miguel Martinez had been with the unit for 3 years. He had a wife and 2 children back on Earth. But this was war, and grief was something they would have to deal with later. 2 more soldiers went silent as their radio signals disappeared. Private Johnson and Specialist Garcia were hit by missiles that they could not avoid. Morrison's team of 12 was now down to 9 soldiers, and they had not even reached the fortress yet. At 15,000 feet, they entered the fortress's main energy shield. Morrison had expected this to be like hitting a wall, but the shield was designed to stop solid objects, not individual soldiers moving at high speed. Instead of stopping them, the shield felt like swimming through thick liquid that sparked with electricity. Morrison's armor systems went crazy as exotic energy flowed around him. Warning lights flashed on his display screen. His radio filled with static. The temperature inside his chute jumped up and down as the energy field tried to cook him alive. "Shield passage successful," he managed to say into his radio when he came out the other side. But 2 more soldiers did not answer when he called their names. Private Lopez and Corporal Davis had been lost to the energy shield. Their armor systems had failed under the massive electrical stress. 7 soldiers remained out of the original 12. Morrison tried not to think about the 5 men and women they had already lost. Each one had been a friend, a teammate, someone he cared about. But the mission had to continue. At 10,000 feet, the fortress grew from a small light to a massive structure that filled Morrison's vision. He could see individual weapon turrets and guard towers. He could see soldiers moving on the walls, but they were all looking outward toward the fake attack that the Galactic Council forces were making from the other side of the fortress. None of the enemy soldiers thought to look up into the sky above their own fortress. Why would they? No one had ever attacked from directly overhead before. It was impossible. It was crazy. It was exactly the kind of thing that humans would try. At 5,000 feet, Morrison began to see details of the fortress's upper levels. There were landing platforms for enemy aircraft. There were communication towers and sensor arrays. Most importantly, there was a main shield generator building that they needed to destroy. 2 minutes to touchdown. Morrison announced to his remaining team, "Remember the plan. Fast, silent, and devastating. We get one chance at this." At 3,000 feet, Morrison pulled his parachute. The advanced stealth chute deployed silently above him. The fabric was made from metamaterials that bent light around them, making the chutes nearly invisible to enemy sensors. The other 6 soldiers deployed their chutes at the same time. Morrison looked around as they drifted down toward the fortress. Sergeant Williams was off to his left, his heavy plasma rifle ready for action. Corporal Chen was to his right, her demolition charges secured to her armor. Lieutenant Kim floated behind him, her electronic hacking equipment humming quietly. The 3 remaining soldiers, Privates Thompson, Lee, and Jackson, formed a defensive triangle around the specialists. Each one carried extra ammunition and backup equipment in case something went wrong with the primary plan. The fortress grew larger and larger below them until Morrison could see individual enemy soldiers walking on the walls. He could see the details of weapon emplacements and guard towers. He could even see lights and windows where enemy officers were probably making plans to defend against a fake attack from the ground. None of them suspected that death was falling silently from the sky above them. 1 minute to touchdown, Morrison whispered into his radio. Weapons ready. Remember, we have surprise on our side, but only for the first few moments. After that, every enemy soldier in the fortress will be trying to kill us. The landing platform grew larger below them. Morrison could see it was exactly where human intelligence had predicted it would be. It was a flat area on the fortress's upper level where enemy aircraft could land to resupply or receive new orders. Most importantly, it was lightly guarded because no one expected an attack from above. 30 seconds, Morrison announced. The team prepared for combat. Each soldier checked their weapons one final time. They reviewed their assigned targets and escape routes. They said silent prayers to whatever gods they believed in. 10 seconds, Morrison said. The landing platform rushed up toward them. Morrison could see 2 enemy guards standing near a communication building. They were looking outward toward the sounds of battle from the fake attack. They had no idea that 7 human soldiers were about to land directly behind them. 5 seconds, Morrison whispered. He prepared to release his parachute harness the moment his feet touched the ground. His rifle was ready to fire. His mind was focused on the first target he would need to eliminate. Contact, Morrison said as his boots touched the metal surface of the enemy fortress. The mission to do the impossible had begun. Morrison's boots hit the metal platform of Fortress Kethmore at exactly 0347 local time. Within 3 seconds, his parachute was cut away and his rifle was in his hands. Around him, the other 6 surviving soldiers landed with the silent precision of ghosts falling from the night sky. The first enemy guard died before he could even turn around. Chen's combat knife slid between the plates of his armor as quietly as a whisper. The guard dropped to the ground without making a sound. The second guard started to raise an alarm, but William's plasma rifle burned a hole through his chest before any words could come out. Platform secured, Morrison whispered into his radio. Moving to primary objectives. The 7 humans spread out across the fortress's upper level like shadows. 2 years of intelligence gathering had given them detailed maps of every corridor, every room, and every defensive position. They knew where the guards would be and when they would change shifts. They knew which doors would be locked and which ones would be open. Most importantly, they knew that no one would expect an attack from inside the fortress itself. Morrison led Chen and Williams toward the main shield generator building. This was their primary target. The energy shields that protected the fortress from orbital bombardment were powered by 3 massive generators hidden deep inside the structure. If they could destroy those generators, the Galactic Council ships could finish the job with their heavy weapons. Lieutenant Kim took Privates Thompson and Lee toward the Fortress Command Center. Her mission was to hack into the enemy computer systems and download the intelligence files that could help end the war. The hegemony's military plans, their weapon designs, their troop movements, all of it was stored in the command center's databanks. Private Jackson was assigned the most dangerous job. He had to work alone, moving through the fortress to plant small explosive charges on key systems. Communication arrays, sensor networks, backup power systems, anything that could help the enemy coordinate their defenses needed to be destroyed. Morrison's team moved through the fortress corridors like deadly spirits. The walls were made of dark metal that absorbed light, making the passages feel like caves. Emergency lighting cast red shadows that helped hide the humans as they crept toward their target. They encountered their first group of enemy soldiers near the main elevator bank. 4 hegemony warriors stood guard, their alien features hidden behind combat helmets. They carried energy weapons that could cut through armor like paper. Under normal circumstances, there would be dangerous opponents for human soldiers. But these were not normal circumstances. The enemy guards were looking outward, listening to reports from the fake battle happening outside the fortress. They expected threats to come from the main entrances, not from behind them inside their own stronghold. Morrison signaled his team with hand gestures. Williams moved to the left. Chen moved to the right. Morrison himself crept straight down the middle of the corridor. The attack lasted exactly 4 seconds. William's plasma rifle took down 2 guards simultaneously. Chen's explosives blew apart the 3rd guard weapon before her knife found his throat. Morrison's rifle finished the 4th guard before he could even understand what was happening. Elevator bank secured, Morrison reported quietly. No alarms raised. They rode the elevator down to the shield generator level. The fortress shook around them as a Galactic Council fake attack continued outside. Energy beams and missiles struck the fortress walls, but the shields absorbed most of the damage. That was about to change. The shield generator room was enormous, filled with 3 machines the size of buildings. Each generator hummed with barely contained energy. Thick cables carried power to the fortress's defensive systems. Warning signs in alien languages covered every surface, telling workers to stay away from the dangerous machinery. Chen, how long do you need? Morrison asked as they entered the room. The demolitions expert was already moving toward the first generator, her explosive charges ready. 5 minutes to place all the charges, she replied. Then 30 seconds after detonation. This whole level will be a very dangerous place to be. Morrison and Williams took defensive positions at the room's entrances while Chen worked. The fortress continued to shake from the outside attack, but Morrison knew the real battle was just beginning. Once the shields went down, every enemy soldier in the fortress would be looking for the saboteurs who had caused the damage. Movement in the corridors. Williams reported from his position. Sounds like a patrol coming this way. Morrison checked his rifle's power level. How many? At least 6, maybe 8. Chen looked up from the explosive device she was attaching to the second generator. I need 3 more minutes. You will get them, Morrison promised. The enemy patrol rounded the corner just as Morrison and Williams opened fire. The corridor filled with energy beams and the sound of alien voices shouting in confusion. The hegemony soldiers had superior numbers and better weapons, but they were caught completely by surprise. Morrison dug behind the support pillars. Enemy fire scorched the air where he had been standing. His rifle spoke repeatedly, each shot carefully aimed. Williams flanked around the other side of the corridor, his heavy weapon cutting through enemy armor like it was made of paper. The battle was fierce but brief. Human training and reflexes proved superior to alien technology. When the shooting stopped, 8 enemy soldiers lay dead in the corridor. Morrison and Williams had only minor burns from near misses. Charges set. Chen announced. 60 seconds of detonation. The 3 humans ran for the emergency stays as alarms finally began sounding throughout the fortress. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Automated voices spoke in alien languages, probably telling everyone to prepare for battle stations. They climbed the stairs 3 at a time as the fortress shook around them. More enemy patrols were moving through the corridors now, searching for the intruders who had somehow gotten inside their impregnable fortress. 30 seconds. Chen called out as they reached the upper level. Morrison kicked open the door to a storage room and pushed his team inside just as the charges exploded. The sound was like thunder trapped inside a metal box. The entire fortress shuddered as the 3 massive shield generators tore themselves apart in clouds of sparking energy. Shield generators destroyed. Morrison reported into his radio. Council forces, you are clear to begin bombardment. Through the fortress walls, Morrison could hear the sound of the Galactic Council ships opening fire with their real weapons for the first time. Energy beams that had been stopped by the shields now struck the fortress directly. Explosions echoed through the corridors as the outer defenses began to crumble. But Morrison's mission was not complete. While the fortress shook under bombardment, Lieutenant Kim's voice crackled over the radio from the command center. I have accessed their computer systems, she reported. Downloading military intelligence files now. But we have a problem. Half the fortress is heading toward my position. Morrison looked at his 2 remaining teammates. They had completed their primary mission, but their friends needed help. The intelligence data Kim was downloading could end the war, but only if she lived long enough to finish the transfer. Chen, Williams, are you ready for one more fight? Morrison asked. Williams checked his weapon's power level. My rifle has enough energy for about 50 more shots. Chen looked at her remaining explosives. I have 3 grenades and a lot of attitude. Morrison smiled grimly. Then let us go save our teammates and finish this job. They burst out of the storage room and ran through corridors filled with smoke and emergency lighting. The fortress was dying around them, but it was not dead yet. Enemy soldiers filled every passage, searching desperately for the humans who had destroyed their defenses. Morrison's team fought their way through 3 more groups of enemy soldiers. Each battle was harder than the last as the aliens began to coordinate their response. But human adaptability and improvisation continued to overcome alien planning and technology. They reached the command center just as Kim finished downloading the last files. "Data transfer complete," she announced. "I have everything: troop movement, weapon specifications, battle plans for the next 6 months. Time to go." Morrison shouted as explosions from the orbital bombardment grew closer and louder. The 7 humans fought their way to the fortress's upper landing platform, where their extraction ship waited. The pilot's eyes were wide with disbelief as the survivors climbed aboard. "How did you do it?" the pilot asked as they lifted off from the burning fortress. Morrison looked back at Kethmore as they flew away. The impregnable fortress was now a ruin of twisted metal and fading energy fields. Explosions continued to light up its interior as the Galactic Council's bombardment found targets that had been protected for 2 years. "We did what humans do best," Morrison replied quietly. "We found a way." Of the 12 soldiers who had jumped from the ship, only 7 returned. But those 7 had accomplished what the entire Galactic Council could not do in 2 years of fighting. They had proven that sometimes the simplest solutions were the most effective. And they had shown the galaxy that human paratroopers were not something to laugh at. They were something to fear.